playing for a bit here, taking questions, trying to make some money in a suboptimal pool. Haven't done the live stream in a little bit. I've been making like YouTube videos and stuff, but so we'll see how rusty we are doing the live commentary, switching between the scenes, answering questions, all that at the same time. I also have 2 chats today. I'll do my best to look at both, but I'm not used to streaming in Twitch and YouTube at the same time. 3 right here with the ace queen suited. Defend a 4-bet. But we just take it down pre. Opening ace king and taking it down. Boring stuff. Defend here. Could 3-bet this hand sometimes. Not the best of flops. I think this hand mainly checks flop. Hands of this like category will stab, but probably slightly weaker than this. And now, you know, call turn. Unless he bets like massive, but yeah, I don't really expect a ton of massive bets on this turn from out of position. So even this is fine for sure, but good river for us. So we've trips here, and over here we've flopped 2 pair, and versus this size, mainly raising this hand. And on the other table, he bets this size, and just gonna raise. Probably like this size. Seems good. Hope not to get jammed on. But, you know, it's like pocket 4s. I would play this way. So, queen 9 he called with. Seems reasonable. This hand's going to mix 3-bet and call. 3-bet pretty aggressively, but we did roll a call. And obviously defending flop. Don't think we have to raise this combo too much here. I'm going to raise like weaker combos and stronger combos. This hand just performs pretty well as a check call. Turn, we're probably going to have to call again. Obviously, we don't love blocking the ace of clubs, but kind of have to pick and choose your bluff catchers here. And at least, like, we have 2 overs, ace high, and we still beat bluffs. So I think if I had the queen of clubs, I'd maybe full turn. But with the ace of clubs, I think call twice is good. And then my mic's really quiet. Okay, I can try boosting it a little bit. Sometimes my mic just like, at least recently has been doing that. So yeah, so river's interesting. We block ace jack. He's not going to bluff with this card much on the river. Like, as in having this card unblocks bluffs. He does go for an overbet, which is kind of interesting. It's only interesting in the fact that he decided not to overbet turn and then overbets this river. I think like this card is going to be pretty prevalent in his triple barrel bluffs, and when he bets this size, we don't have to hear call hand this week. The other table we value bet 2 pair on the river, and we got called by ace high. Yeah, I bumped it up a little bit. I can go even more. We'll just go. And I'll try and speak up as much as I can. I'll try and bring up the the YouTube chat as well. Got 5-4 suited here. And I will defend the 5-4 suited, do a 3-bet. Looks good at first glance. It's not terrible. Probably just gonna start bluffing this hand on flop. This hand can also like delay bluff, so like I can't just pure bet. But with the backdoor flush draw, pretty decent board for our range. He's gonna have a lot of hands that just pure miss this board. I'm okay starting with a stab. Think we should mix checks with this. Like I don't think we just get to bet this hand every time though. And I'm not gonna use a bigger size here. I don't think it's that beneficial. Check calls. With like the bad gutter and not much else going on, I don't think this hand really wants to triple on this turn. Obviously on clubs and some other, on like a 6 or a 6 we make a straight, but like on certain turns I'll double barrel, but this hand I think just wants to go bet check. And if he checks river, I'll probably bluff this hand. Pretty easy for us to like thin value bet this river and just fold versus this. You guys can let me know. I turned the volume up, so hopefully that helps. I can turn it up even more if not, but hopefully we got it now. I'm going to 3-bet the 9s. And defend a 4-bet. But just take it down. As I said, like, not the best lineup right now. I think it's just basically a reg battle, but reg battles are good content usually. We raise Jack 8 suit on the left. Not a board we're going to be doing a ton of betting. Out of position, so we're going to check this hand. No equity, out of position. I don't know what his flying range exactly looks like. It depends. Like, you know, everyone plays this spot slightly different. And with Jack 8, we're just going to check fold. For context's sake, yellow is reg, right? So if you see table full of all yellow players, it's not the best table. Very good board for our range. Big paired flops. Gonna be very good boards for the in-position player. We're gonna raise bigger cards on often, and the big blind's gonna defend. You know, in this spot, say like we won't have hands like 6-4 suited, but our opponent will have tons of hands like that. And on the boards like this, they'll have literally nothing. you know, even 6-4 clubs, like backdoor flush draw. It's not loving life, and then even some of his like good flush draws, or sorry, even his hands like 6-4 diamonds still don't love life on this flop. So just like pretty good board for us. This hand should mix bet and check on turn. I'm gonna check, and it's kind of annoying because like this card's actually really bad to bluff catch in this spot because we want him to float hands like 10-7, 10-8 that without a diamond. I don't think we get to fold trips versus this size though. We could consider raising, but again, I don't think I want to do that with this hand. I think we just like reluctantly call here. Should be able to find bluffs in this spot. Yeah. But yeah, just like not folding trips basically against that size. Good, like kind of a passive line from his hand, but I'm gonna assume he rolled low pre, rolled post because he has, you know, a hand that can 3-bet pre-flop and then a hand that's a pretty high frequency check raise on that texture against a small bet from our player. It's funny, I got asked what's the yellow label on. I just said it's a reg, yeah. Yellow is reg. Good board for us on the left. We flop top pair. Could, you know, this texture you can kind of do a lot of things. You could big bet check. I mean, I guess not a lot of things. You either want to bet a lot for a small size or bet less frequent for a very big size. I don't think anything else is that great. So we're going to just simplify things. When I'm streaming, trying to read the chat and stuff, you know, probably better to just play the strategy that's harder to mess up rather than trying to perfect the more complicated strategy to eke out a bit more EV. If I'm off stream, you know, playing focused, undistracted, then I can worry about mixing in that spot. This turn is once I small bet flop, he just check calls. It's like a bit. He's gonna make say more nuts potentially on this turn, like 3-5, 4 deuce. But this hand can just kind of do whatever on turn. I think like checking relatively often is pretty good here. Having the aces diamonds is pretty good for check just because when he does float his diamond backdoor draws, we at least, you know, reduce his equity by blocking one of his flush complete outs. And versus the check on the river, we're gonna bet. Shouldn't really be check calling many worse hands than us. Sorry, many better hands than us. Most of his better hands should bet the river himself. So I think we're gonna want to have some like pretty thin big bets here. And he folded and we win. On YouTube, if you want to get my attention, just because there's a lot going on, just direct it to this. What else? So PWR coaching on YouTube for you guys if you want to ask me a question and highlight it. We 3-bet this hand. Not always, but definitely in here. And then, yeah, fold versus small 4-bet. Sevens is going to be a pretty high frequency defend and not a great flop. Sorry, you guys can't see this, but we raised sevens from the cutoff. We faced the 3-bet. He goes for the, when you see this, can kind of infer very high frequency small bet. I think sevens with a club. You have to like kind of overfold out of position on this texture when you have these hands, but I think like we still want to defend it sometimes. We roll a defend with a club and we'll go from there. But definitely gonna struggle on future streets. It's definitely interesting what we want to do on this river. So I have like worse hands for sure, but I don't have that many hands with a club that can bluff here. So I'm gonna use this hand. Just because like I don't have offsuit hands. I don't have like Jack 10 off. I have like Ace 10 off and Ace Jack off, but those are gonna also raise flop at a frequency. So this, if we want some bluffs on this river with a club blocker, using like some of our weakest pairs, and this is basically our weakest pair. Like we'll have like 5s, I guess, but if you just think of our range there, like 6s and 8s have improved to sets. We don't even have 7s at full frequency because we don't pure defend pre and we don't pure defend flop. So when we get to the river with 7s, it's got to be towards the bottom of our range, so kind of have to bluff it. Like you could roll for that one for sure, but I think like it's kind of hard not to find a bluff with that hand in that exact spot. We defend a 3-bet with king 10 suited. And versus this small size with the nut backdoor and we have the nut backdoor flush draw. We have a backdoor straight draw. We have 2 overs to a 9. Kind of just have to defend. Turn this hand is going to be definitely part of our bluffing range, but our bet frequency isn't really that high on this turn. So having like this combo, I think it's okay to check at least sometimes. And then obviously we're just going to try and show down on this river. If he blocks, basically going to call first check. I don't think there's much value to be had here, so I'm just going to check. We could maybe bet like king queen here, but I think king 10 is mainly going to check. And he had jacks. Yeah, for the people who don't know who I am, I'm a newer Upswing coach. I've been creating content for them for the past few months. I have a module that I've recently uploaded on there where it was pretty fun to do. So if you're not an Upswing member, worth checking out, I think. I'm a little biased because I created it, but the content is, I went through some nights just like watching high stakes games. So like, a lot of 10-20 and higher. I think there might be some 5-10 hands in there as well. So it's not actually my hand histories, because when I was coming up in poker, I'm actually going to give up on the left, am I? Okay. My opponent takes away my ability to bluff. Wasn't that interesting of a hand. What was I saying? Yeah, so when I first started out in poker, like, there wasn't solvers. I would watch content like this, other people creating YouTube videos or whatever it was, but, that wasn't as prevalent back then. Back in my day, as they say. So how I would get good, or how I improved myself, was I would watch higher stakes players, watch what they were doing, and try and guess, okay, on this flop, what am I going to do? Things weren't as defined when I started out. It wasn't so much like, there weren't all these multiple bet sizings. A lot of times it was like you c-bet 2/3. In 3-bet pots, you always c-bet half pot. There was all these things that just kind of like weren't, or you don't see as much now. Now it's a lot more, this hand's like pretty high frequency 3-bet, but I'm going to call it this time based on what we rolled. So yeah, there wasn't as much just like, on this texture I do this, people played their hands a lot more, but you could just see like interesting things that high stakes players did. Nowadays you can watch and like kind of predict, sizings based on like a spot. Like say here, if you were watching this in the replayer, you see this flop, you think like, what sizes do you expect from out of position? And I kind of only expect small sizes. I think like formulating like a big bet strategy is kind of unnecessary for this spot. I don't think it's preferred, because in position it has like a decent amount of ace-x, so the bigger you go, the easier you make it for them. You want to go small so that when I have hands as weak as this, I have to defend, and even weaker than this, obviously. This hand, king high, you're going to do a lot of checking here on turn. We just have so much garbage in our range, and our betting frequency is like not small, but not enormous on this turn. And with this type of hand, I think I'm just going to fold. We do have to defend some king highs, but I don't really like defending king 9 there. Riske is a great name for a card player. Yeah, pretty fortunate. So yeah, I'm kind of going over, someone just asked what module that I did. So, long way, we're getting there. So yeah, I used to watch and kind of see what they do. So what I did for my Upswing module is I was trying to train that mindset to the people watching the content. So what I encourage you to do is do that. Just like find players that you respect. Depending on what stake you're playing, it could just be the stake above you. So if you're a 10 NL player and you want to play 25 NL, maybe watch them 25 NL and try and go through that process and like guess what people are going to do, and then see if like they do something that you predicted or if it's different, whatever. And then whenever you get to really interesting hands, then do like a really deep dive on that spot, right? So like most spots, maybe it's like, oh, that's kind of different, but like, not that different that I really want to spend a lot of time on it. But then every now and then you'll see something that's like really different. Pause that thought while we have aces. Cut off first big blind. Just like, we're just going to 4-bet this at basically full frequency. We don't have to go that big here. And on this texture, we have kings also, and we get jammed on with aces, and we run into queens. We win the first run, and win the second run. Nice. And then over here, versus the size, just like mainly check raising. If he has a set, sucks for me. And turn, we can kind of go either way. This hand mixes. I do roll a bet. So I'm gonna bet. And if I get jammed on, just call it off and go from there. I don't think, like, he shouldn't really have that many jams here. I don't even know a hand that would want to jam. And we get this river. So how many hands does he get to the river that bluff? Probably not that many. We have like 1 to 1, like less than 1 to 1. I think we just shove and we run into the nuts, but no snap is good. So anyways, we'll get through this eventually. That module. So basically what I did is I found high stakes hands, either spectating the lobby myself or on 2+2, just like looked for really interesting hands between players that I respect. We do get called by a set, so good for us. His turn decision is interesting. Like, if he's calling that river, he assumes I have some triple barrels that don't contain a club. So if that's the case, then his turn call is like pretty good, because like once I get to that turn, I make some flushes, and then I have some like low equity and some no equity bluffs. Like I should have some check raises that barrel that turn that aren't just a club. Otherwise, I can never bluff that river. It is obviously interesting when you get like that weird SPR. When you're shoving at that SPR, but like it's hard to have that many bluffs, and you have to really have you have to plan ahead, right? So you have to make sure that in that spot. Because when I say it's hard to have bluffs, it's hard to have natural bluffs, right? So if you look at a solver there, they're going to check raise, bet some hands on the turn, and then if they don't have enough of a formulated strategy to have enough bluffs on that river, you either have to turn some value into bluffs. It's kind of hard. You're going to have to like turn 2 pairs or something into a bluff there. Or, if you did check raise and block an overpair without a club, then you have to shove that river. So if I had kings no club, I would still have to shove that river, like that type of thing, right? Okay, so we'll finally get through that module. So basically in the module, I find these hands that I consider interesting. We flop a boat on the left, so, tough life. So yeah, I look for hands that we consider interesting, and then what I do is, I go through the process with in the module, basically just talk my way through it. I think this hand can go either way. I'm going to check this time. Sorry. So, and I just look at the hands, and we try and talk through in real time, predict what someone's going to do. I kind of block all of his hands, so I'm just going to block river. It's kind of hard for him to have a bluff. He mainly has ace highs here that play this way. So let's try and get some value from ace high. And we get snapped, and I guess he has ace 6, something like that. He had king 4. So yeah, you just have like a really weak king. It's just very difficult for him to have that hand when we have our hand, right? And so yeah, what we do is we'll look through the spot and look for any differences, and then we'll mark them down in a sheet. This is what I do in the module. So it's like, I expect to see this player did this, and I show you like just a very basic. It doesn't really matter too much what you're using to determine what you want to do in these spots, or sorry, to do your analysis. Just do some sort of analysis. So I have a sheet that we kind of go through together, and just like make some talking points basically, or some things to do a deeper dive in later. So we go through, I'll fold the double barrel here, 10-9, and probably on the king, it's an interesting spot. Like, we don't do too much betting on the king. So I'm actually going to check the 10-9, because I would be checking like a lot on this turn. On the left, I'm actually going to check back this. Like, I roll a check. This hand doesn't pure bet flop. It's very high, but we want to make sure we have some of these hands in our check back range as well. And versus bet check bet on the, we bet check, we face a bet check bet here, and we just have to fold. And then on the left, we call now. Okay, so we're finally going to get there. So to finish the discussion, then we take those spots and we go through them in Pio and see what, does what the player is doing match up with Pio, or is it, do I want to shove here? I think this is fine. But he just has a flush, so I don't think we should bluff that hand always, but given the situation, like, we're gonna have more straights, we can even raise some non-flushes on that run out. So like, and so if I have 6-7, I'm gonna raise. If I have some, like, if I even make some like 2-pair in a way that way, I say like ace-5 exactly, I'll probably raise versus that size. And so it's good for him to put his flush into that size because he doesn't want me to be able to just raise too aggressively. Finally, to finish that thought, yeah, basically then we just go through the hand histories and analyze it in Pio and just see what's the high stakes player doing. Does it line up with Pio? Is it different? Do we like what they're doing? Just because someone's a really good player doesn't mean they don't make mistakes. So we try and look and see what they're doing and see if we like think in the end, is this a play we agree with, or is this a bad exploit, interesting exploit? And you just like train the way you think about spots rather than just being so straightforward of just, I bet 1/3 here, I check here, I bet, like, just like being a bit less rigid in the way we approach poker. This hand doesn't like need to bet flop. It's like fine. We block his check raises, which is nice. With this combo, we should mix bet and check on turn. I'm gonna want to overbet this turn a bunch, so I'm actually gonna check king-7. We don't have to overbet this turn just because like the king doesn't improve that much of his range, so we can bet thinner for value. But I think we definitely want to check back some king X and a king with 2 unders, and then we just obviously call river. Yeah, like I think like you can't just, if you just jam like flushes on the turn, then it's pretty easy. Like you want to mix some sets in there that deny equity, and then when I have kings with a club, I just have to bet call, or at the very least that you deny my equity. When I have worse than that, here you don't do a ton of betting in this spot, and so I'm gonna again king-7 again. We're checking the turn. It's not my standard to just always check king-7. Don't hear what I'm not saying, but this hand makes sense. Like we want to float this flop pretty aggressively on this turn. We're going to be pretty polar. We don't have like a super strong flush draw, and obviously we just like call versus this line, and we get a nice. Part of the benefit of checking the hand back is his hand's drawing dead. We keep that hand in and allow him to bet 2x pot on the river, and then just don't deviate from what our plan was. Our plan was we want to check back that hand so we can defend against large bets on the river. We can't just get to the river and be like, oh crap, that's a really big bet, I fold. It's like, yeah, well, it's a big bet, but it's also one of the best hands we're ever going to have there. Broken Shackle, what's up, Michael? If I'm in the small blind with a decent hand, but there's a 3-better from the dealer, is it okay to flat? Based on the question, I'm going to assume that you're probably playing lower stakes. It's not a knock at you, just like, as you play more, you'll kind of know this spot. So you're probably playing lower stakes, and the rake's going to be pretty high at lower stakes. So cold calling 3 bets becomes even worse. So if you're unfamiliar with the term cold call, that's just if someone else 3-bets and you weren't the initial raiser and you call after the 3-better, so you have not invested money in the pot and now you call, you typically don't want to do that except in very specific spots at like higher stakes games where the rake's lower. So I would say just as a general approach, no, you want to either 4-bet yourself or fold. So if your hand isn't good enough to 4-bet, just fold. Canadian violence, yeah, some can-on-can violence. I actually don't like my bet here. I didn't realize it was multi-way. And obviously just fold. Here, another one of those paired boards, pretty good for us. And we're going to defend against the raise. We're also playing a pot here against Max on, and we're betting again. I'm going to check this turn pretty often. And on the left, if he shoves, we fold. But his only size really on this river should be shoved. But he has ace-8 of clubs. Kind of a weird... It's fine, obviously, but maybe a bit unnecessary to use that hand blind versus blind for such an aggressive blind. I mean, if he thinks I'm massively over c-betting, it's definitely fine. Just because he'll generate so many folds. But he's going to want to... He doesn't have that many ace-x of clubs based on the spot. He's going to 3-bet a lot of them. So when he does have like nut flushes, it's not as important in position, but he's definitely going to want to call some of them. So he just needs to be a bit more selective, I think. And raising ace-8 of clubs is pretty close. Probably like the strongest ace-x of clubs he has in that spot. And here we win versus ace-6 offsuit. Here, our opponent checks back. Pretty good board for us, so even though I have ace high, I think we can be pretty aggressive in that spot. Yeah, a bunch of Jarrett Man fans in the chat. Makes a bunch of videos, Plain Explains on YouTube. This hand is going to mix 3-bet and call. Not aces. Aces is going to 3-bet if we face an open. And we do. And we see a small blind 3-bet. We're going to cold 4-bet. So this is the spot someone was just asking about. Not going to have a calling range here, so just cold 4-bet. And we have ace-jack. We're just checking twice here. And our opponent folded to the cold 4-bet. And we're going to show down ace-jack on the right. I have a potential bluff catch versus a bet. We have aces again on the left. And same player opens again. We thought maybe he could give us a taste of our own medicine. This board going to be pretty aggressive. He doesn't really have many great hands on here, so going to want to be betting pretty aggressively, and half pot is pretty appropriate. So far this session we've had aces a bunch and 3-bet or 4-bet with them. Pretty high caliber play if you ask me. Also for anyone who's unfamiliar or unaware, I also do, you see PWR coaching in the YouTube chat. Quite low volume wise. I can turn it up a bit more. I have turned it up a bunch, but could just be me. I sometimes like talk quiet when I'm streaming. But yeah, so PWR coaching, that's Poker with Risk coaching. I also run a CFP that's separate from Upswing, so I create content for Upswing But I also run a CFP of a group of individuals where, people apply, and if you get in, you work with myself and some other high stakes head coaches, and we help you kind of replicate what we did. The 4 of us all went from playing 100L to playing 500L plus in about a year's time of working together. So we try and take the success we've had doing that and show our students, what we did to achieve that. So we work with our students. And so if you're someone who's playing, typically you want to be playing at least 15L plus, and you're looking to take that jump, looking to move up in stakes, really improve your game, I would encourage you to head over to my Twitter or YouTube. Sorry, not YouTube. Head over to my Twitter, and you can find the application pinned to the Twitter. Apply, and I also encourage our students to use a combination of things like these resources. So a lot of our students also watch Upswing content, because when you're trying to get better at poker, your goal is to just absorb as much content as possible. I don't think I'm gonna have a lot of unpaired hands in this spot, so I think in this line I'm just gonna show down a 7. I still beat hands like this. I think it's arguable whether or not he wants to just bluff himself in that spot, but maybe again he just rolled low or something. But 3 is gonna be pretty low in his range on that run out. Very risk decisions. See, the puns are coming out. But yeah, it doesn't take very long. The application is really short, so if you kind of stuck at 50L, 100L, 200L, whatever it may be, and you really want to get to the higher stakes, take the few minutes to fill out the application, and we can potentially get you in the program. How often you get aces? Well, we have, as that message comes up in the chat, we have aces again. So I guess it's the Upswing stream run good. And we've been facing 3-bets when we have aces at a pretty high frequency. We don't have to 4-bet. He goes kind of small for the situation, but when we're 4-betting in this spot in position, we don't have to go very big. And if he shoves, we will call. But he just calls. It's not a great board for us, but it's also not a great board for him. Can kind of go either way here. I don't think we necessarily bet range on this flop, so I don't mind checking aces sometimes, so I'm going to check it this time. And if he bets this turn, may shove, may call. We're just going to play it out. On this turn, it's more worth the shove. I don't block hearts. And then versus the double check, I think I'm just going to bet half pot myself. And if we run into a set of 10s, we run into a set of 10s. It's kind of interesting, he's not really that incentivized to double check raise here. So I do expect a decent amount of check folds on this turn. But he does shove. And he also has aces. So chop it up. If I ran as hot as this, I could beat 10-0. This should be a 3-bet sometimes, but we don't roll it this time. On the right, mono board. Again, not really one we should be doing a ton of betting on. I don't know this player. Supposedly he's only played 50,000. That's more than me, because supposedly I've played 5,000. So I'm going to check twice with this week of an ace and then just value bet river. And get called by 10-7. So flop check was good because he turned a 10. It's just debatable whether I want to bet. If I have that guy tagged as an unknown. Doesn't always mean he's a weaker player. Just means I don't have any history with him. What's going on, bro? Not much. Like I said, first time streaming in a while, so could be a bit rusty. So rusty, I missed my mouth with my water bottle. On the left here, I'm going to check. Just don't really think. I think this hand can definitely bet, and then I'm gonna bet twice here with this hand. We want some lower equity bluffs. A lot of our straight draws and stuff would have already bet flop. They should mix, but I think like when we have this combo, it's a pretty good one to at least bet turn. Can bluff spades. We block some ace 10, ace jack, which are gonna be like he's always gonna play ace 10 and ace jack, or very high frequency gonna play ace 10, ace jack. This, you know, that way check back flop, arrive at the turn. Debatable whether this should even be an open, and do this lineup especially. And we get punished. I'm just gonna fold. What do I look for in applicants? We're looking for, obviously, the higher the stakes you play with the win rate, the more likely you're gonna get into the program, because you know, the whole thing about this program is the way our CFP works is you get a lot more one-on-one time than you would in a lot of, say, the competitor programs. So we're looking for people who we want to work with, right? We're not just trying to bring in as many people as we can. We're just looking to bring in people that we see potential in. So the higher the stakes you play with a win rate, you know, that's obviously going to help your application. Outside of that, we like to see, you know, volume. If you've played a lot of hands and you're break even at 100L, like that's something that's worth, because you know if you're break even on your own, you know, a lot of people struggle to even break even in poker. So if you break even on your own, that's a good starting point. Then we can take, you know, find out why are you just breaking even. How do we change you into a winning player? So then we just work on that. So if you want like a hierarchy, the higher the stakes with the win rate is the most important thing. Next is just the stake you play and how many hands you've played at that. So even if you have like a, you know, if you're playing 200L, break even over a long time, that's more, it's gonna help your application more than if you've played a bunch of hands at 50L and you're break even, right? And then there's other stuff in the application, just like how much time are you able to dedicate to poker? Like, is it your full-time thing? Is it something you're doing on the side? Those type of things. I'm gonna use like, I think this size, like you could use a really big size here, but I think using this type of size is pretty good too. Like you could pot that spot 10-5-7 with flush draw, because you don't bet that board as often. We have a decent amount of 10x, but we still have a lot of hands that whiff that board. So you could just like use like a pot and check. All that really matters, obviously it's going to matter what size you use, but as long as you're adjusting your frequency based on your size, right? If you bet pot, you don't get to bet range. If you bet 10%, you could bet range, that type of thing. And then it's like a slope, a sliding like scale. So the more you want to see bet that spot, typically the smaller size you need to use. Did not see that coming. Yeah, I mean, the least likely outcome there when he jams turn is that we chop. When I have aces, right? Gotta run. Alright, have a good one, man. Thanks for stopping by. Don can stack off the Jer, man. So how do you know he's making a video right now? The program it's a coaching for profit, so CFP, that me and 3 other mid to high stakes coaches run. If you want to find out the application, so if you want to see the application, it's pinned to my Twitter. We're in the process of launching like a website and all that, so there'll be more details. But for the time being, you can ask questions here. You can also check out my Twitter. And then, as I've already mentioned, make sure to also check out the content I've created on Upswing. So I have a bunch of plain explains like this, where sometimes we'll go even. Here I'm answering questions. I'm trying to do both, so it's sometimes harder to do as deep a dive in the strategy section of it. So if you want to see like deeper analysis in a lot of spots, I would encourage you to purchase an Upswing membership and to check my content out there. And I also have that module I talked about, which was a lot of fun. got pretty good feedback. It's just cool to go through the spots, like I said, and try and predict what are these like high stakes crushers doing, what are they doing that I'm not, and just going from there. I think like half pot works pretty well here. A+ shirt vibes, thanks man, appreciate it. I like to start off down. I had a session, yes, I should have posted it. We basically didn't win a pot for an hour and a half straight, and we lost a lot of very big pots. So I think in like 800 hands, we lost 10 binds at 500. So that was pretty fun. One of my, more enjoyed sessions. Again, if you want my attention on on Twitch at Poker with Risk, and if you want my attention in the YouTube chat at PWR space coaching. This is an interesting spot. I see bet flop small, check call turn. Probably like he usually has a 4 here. The way he's played this spot. And like he should bluff, and I block his like. If he's gonna value bet a flush on this run out, it should be this card. He's not gonna bluff with either of these cards. We're gonna call. Right, like it's pretty inefficient to bluff ace high on that river. Not even that efficient to bluff king high on that river. So we just like unblock bluffs. We need some bluff catches. So we call, and we were right that time. Doesn't mean we're gonna be right every time. Something. When the more and more poker you play, you start to realize like you don't get to be right that often. Right? When you call, everyone like probably one of the biggest hurdles newer players have with like the mental aspect of poker is there's so many spots where you're laid such a good price, like you're bluff catching the river and you're laid a really good price. Actually, this hand should 3-bet sometimes, but we don't get the 3-bet. Maybe we should have. Who knows? If we would have got 4-bet, we shouldn't have. If we would have got called, we should have. Right? That's how you should approach poker. But yeah, you'll get to the river and you'll be laid such a good price. And most of the time when you bluff catch in those spots, you're going to lose more money, right? You're going to call and lose based on the price you're given. But that's fine because as long as you win the pot enough, it'll make you money in the long run. I'm just going to use like half pots and checks here. We're flopping 2-pair with every ace-x. We'll use the same size here. We get check called. It's pretty interesting. I think I still want to bet twice with this hand. We get check raise on the right. We're going to call and play the turn. I could also just 3-bet flop, obviously. But I'll probably just... If he has 7-8 clubs, that sucks for me. But I'll probably just shove turn or call it off if he shoves. And I think I just want to jam now. Deny equity. Still get inverse ace-5 or 6-5 potentially. If he has 7-8, sucks for us. But he has king-queen of clubs. And at first glance, I thought we lost, but we do boat up. So back in the old days of streaming, we would say boom goes dynamite and put up one of our really shitty-looking emotes. Here we have ace-king. We are going to shove versus a 4-bet most of the time. But we just get the fold. What are the minimum stakes? Basically 50 now is like the lowest we'll accept someone. Who is the most notable student you have coached? Well, one of the head coaches in my program, one of the head coaches of my CFP is a former student of mine. He's probably the most successful, but he's not going to be like super well known because he's not like a stars crusher, right? Like most of the times people know people because they just do really well in stars. But if you're playing on like ACR and other sites, you're not going to be as well known. So I don't have any like students who are like Okay, so like this spot's super interesting. He's not actually going to have that many great hands here, and we're going to want some lower equity bluffs. I'm going to use this hand. Like he shouldn't have deuces or threes ever. He can have sixes, but he shouldn't have 4 or 5 suited. And then he's going to just have like 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s that all hate life. And like he can do this, I guess, but that's fine. We fold. Seems like he obviously has hands that can do that, but it just doesn't seem all that great. But these are reg. I'm assuming he's a winning player. I don't know him personally, so maybe he's done the work and knows exactly what his like range is supposed to look like for that spot. Winning tournament player in the process, switching to cash. You're winning at 200L on soft site, but the hands aren't able to be tracked, so no hand histories or super accurate win rate. Should I look into the CFP, or is it's going to be, I would say it's difficult to get in if you don't have any proof to show, right? Like we have to be able to verify your win rate in some capacity. Because, you know, we get a lot of applicants. We've had, say, like over 250 applicants we've only been around for about a year. Don't even do that much like active marketing. Like most of my marketing, I did not mean to bet this spot. It's fine to bet with this hand, but this is not. I would like basically always check this spot. And this is what I was talking about. Like when you're streaming and playing, you're gonna do stuff like this that like I just wouldn't do. And like probably is a little confusing to Jarrett Man. And now I'm in a weird spot because I don't usually like we make 2 pair. We have Queen 8 with the Queen of Spades. This hand can go either way. I'm gonna just like check because I don't usually bet this hand in this spot. So even though it's like somewhat appealing to bet 2 pair here, I think it's also really nice to just keep in his lowest equity bluff. So he should float the flop versus the small size with some like spades that are basically drawing dead now. So some like 10-7 with the 10 of spades, 10-9 obviously has a gutter, but pretty low. And I think I'll just go bet check bet for like a normal size, pretty low equity, right? So I'm okay with how I've played this hand beyond the flop, but I don't like my flop bet. So yeah, I would say you need to be able to somehow prove that you're a winning player. So if you're playing on untracked sites, you'll have to do something to prove to us that you've won some money. Would you consider winning 25 NL? So if you're winning at 25 NL, you can still apply, but we basically say like you have to be playing at least 50 NL before you can get in, and so we could talk with you and see if there's something that we can work with. You can also just again in the meantime say you want to get to 50 NL, watch some of the ups. There's lots of upswing. So if you're a 25 NL player who's doing pretty well and you want to get to 50 NL, lots of good content for a player in your skill range on Upswing. So if you're not already an Upswing member, there's Plain Explains, lots of modules. The module I just did, and like there's a lot of things that you can watch in the module section that'll just help you with like specific spots. Like in this spot, I 3-bet these hands. I 4-bet. What was my C-bet range? Yada yada. Like very concrete answers. And then there'll also be some spots that are this hand actually can bet at a frequency, so I'm gonna bet this time. Sorry. La-di-da. If he bets turn, he doesn't really have Jack 9. He doesn't really have too much 9x, so I'm not gonna go huge here, but I think like anything like I'm gonna bet a size that like 2 pair plus can bet, because I'm not too concerned with his range. Like big blind versus button, he has some 9x, but not enough that I'm overly concerned. I just 3-bet to the wrong size. It's not a huge deal, but I 3-bet too small here. Oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't realize he opened to 3x, so that was the issue. I was like, my size actually looks fine, but pretty good board for our 3-bet range. Block, king, jack, spades. We're not going to be banging this turn that often, so I'm going to just bet. I'm going to bet this hand and potentially fire 3 with it. This turn is like, he's going to make some straights that we don't have. Now we don't love having an 8 or a jack. I think I'm going to give this one up. I think I'd rather fire the river with some of my... Yeah, I mean, that's like the hand we're targeting, basically, right? So if I had a 6, I would like hate bluffing that river. I think an 8 is close. I think my hand like mainly wants to shove, but really weird spot, obviously. But yeah, I kind of lost train of thought. But yeah, if you're playing 25L, trying to get to 15L, maybe in the meantime, just go over, check out all the upswing content, absorb that type of stuff, get yourself to a point where you're beating 15L, and then look to apply. Yellow is a reg. Someone's asking about the colors. I'm just going to keep it to like yellow and red are regs, and then the bluish color is... Oh my god, I just misclicked again. We opened the 6-9 off from the cutoff. This tag is just like one tabling or some sort of unknown. As in, I don't play against them regularly. Sometimes they'll turn out they're like a cash game player or... Sorry, a tournament player or just a recreational player, but it just means I don't know for sure right now. Pretty good flop. Flop top pair and a flush draw. And mainly just going to check call this hand. And it's kind of... I mean, it's good for me if I just keep making the nuts. But less exciting... This spot's interesting. I don't think I'm going to overbet this combo. But actually, he only has bluff catchers now. And he makes some like 2 pairs and stuff here. And he never has a flush, so yeah, I'm going to overbet here. Because he can have like Jack 10, King Jack, King... Obviously, I have block. Having the king is like not amazing there. But because we want him to have King X, because that's the easiest for him to hero call. So we'd rather have a flush of like, you know, Queen High. Because the difference in, you know, obviously King High flush is stronger, but it's harder for him to call when we have that hand, right? But I just think the way that board runs out, if the board was less dynamic on the river, I might not overbet my hand just because he makes less bluff catching hands. Pretty good board for us. One we can get away with betting pretty aggressively in this hand. Doesn't really want to check. Doesn't love betting, but is fine to bet with. Turn's interesting. I definitely want to bet with some like hands that are lower equity. And I unblock like his call fold, so I'm okay with that. Do I have pre-flop charts at my, like, do I have access to them? Yes. Am I currently looking at any? No. It would be very difficult to look at ranges, stream, look at the chat, play 2 tables. So, I won't play perfect pre-flop, but I'll play close enough that I can make money. Would you be I missed the question up here, but would you be defending more in regular 6 max? Are you tighter because of zoom? I'm not tighter because of the zoom. I wouldn't change the way I play based on the fact that it's zoom. So, and the thing is, it's not like it's anonymous. Like, I've played against everyone in these, most of these people, you know, if they're a decent player, for the most part, I've played against them. If they're not a decent player, then I can just kind of like make some assumptions. Yeah, it's actually kind of funny. So I've only obviously been working with Upswing this year. Like, I did some commentary with them earlier this year for the Heads Up Challenge. It was pretty fun. Like, I'm not a Heads Up player, but I did play Heads Up for like a few months, just tried it out. So yeah, I did some work. So I'm not like completely foreign to heads up, but it's definitely not my strong suit, we'll say. But so prior to that, I hadn't really done anything with upswing. I'm just gonna I'm at least firing twice with this hand. But it will obviously fold versus action. But yeah, 2 of the head coaches in my program actually, they were struggling at poker when prior to working with me. And they both said one of the best purchases they've made in their early career. And this is prior to I was working with Upswing, so I'm not being paid to promote this. But they basically said the best investment they made was they purchased a $7 thing on Upswing. I don't even know the exact product. I know Mike mentioned it when we did the heads up challenge. It's a $7 or $12. I forget the exact price point, but it's one of their cheaper price points, and it basically just gives you I think it's just a way to approach small pots, or maybe it's just the pre-flop ranges. Obviously the pre-flop ranges now have gotten a lot more comprehensive and stuff, so they might be a bit more, but yeah, they just one little purchase that cost them $7 to $12 was all they needed to go from a break-even player to a slightly winning player. So yeah, people want to get better at poker and never invest into it. I think content like this is great. If you can watch winning players who stream on Twitch and YouTube, that's great. That's a great place to start. But if you really want to take your game to the next level, eventually you're going to need to invest in your game. You're going to find very few people, especially nowadays, you have to at least buy Pio at some point. But you're going to find very few people who go from, say, small stakes to high stakes, or even micro stakes to small stakes without ever investing in their game in some capacity. So these small investments where you're spending 15, 20, whatever it may be, on some ranges or some things that help you think about poker are worthwhile investments, I think. Hi, Ryan. In a 1-3 live cash game, 1 second. So my opponent bets pot here on the right. We have aces. I'm going to check pretty often here, and we're going to check call. Super interesting spot in just the fact that he doesn't have kings or jacks. He shouldn't even have eights that often here. So he's king jack. It's a very weird spot for him to be betting this size. Obviously he can be just pretty polar here, but I don't know how many really nutted hands he actually has in this line. So I guess we'll just call again. Worst rivers are probably a 9 or a ace, to be honest. 7's not great either. But weird spot. This is one of those spots where so 10-9 gets there, so he's queen 10. He has missed flush draws, but in order to have enough bluffs in this river, he kind of has to set it up earlier with a hand 8-9, jack 10. Yeah, we'll see what he. If he gave up with one of those hands, then I should probably just hero fold the river. Yeah, so he gave up the river with queen 10, which just means he doesn't have any bluffs in this spot, right? He had queen 10, unblocks hearts, river's a 7. If you don't bluff this hand, then you literally have no bluffs in this line. So it's just something I should call aces in this spot because I have aces with a heart. It's not really, those cards aren't really going to be prevalent in his river bluffing range. But if he doesn't bluff queen 10, then he has no bluffs in that spot. So I should probably just fold everything. Sorry, so you have ace king, c-bet 1/3, and you double on a 9 for 60%. And villain jammed. Would you call needing... Wait, we have top 2 pair? I would never fold. I just bet call top 2 pair there. And if he has a... he should shove worse for value. It's a live game. People can just shove ace queen here sometimes. So you don't need to be beating... this is kind of that spot we were talking about before. It's not we just call because we expect to always win. It's that if he somehow has a better hand, even a set, we have equity against that. Board like this, he's actually going to miss quite a lot, so I'm okay betting. Just going for the small c-bet. We don't get to just pure bet these boards, but I think when I do bet, I just small bets here. But yeah, literally never fold ace king. Actually, I'm going to just block this turn again. I think this is just a spot where he struggles a lot unless he has a flush. And I'm actually going to half pot this river. Hope he doesn't have quads or pocket tens. But based on that, he either has a queen or a 10. Jacks with a heart. Alright. Seems reasonable. Yeah, it should be fun. Like, I'm looking forward to watching Doug's analysis. The $7 post-flop game plan. That's what it is. That's what it is. That's the one. That they're like $7 investment, and it took them from. It's not going to be the exact same for everyone. Not everyone can just invest $7 and now all of a sudden you're a winning player. But it'll definitely improve your game, and it's worth $7. Poker is funny because it's so easy to get your money back in like EV, right? Where it's like you spend $7 on that, and if it makes, even if you're playing 5-0, if you win like 2 stacks in your poker career at 5-0 that you wouldn't have won without that investment, you're net positive, right? You're $3 positive with winning 2 pots. So like these like small investments, like don't be cheap. Just spend the $7 if you think it can help your game. If you don't have any charts and you think your pre-flop game is struggling, spend the money and buy some charts. It's just like having some structure to your game is so important. Take it from someone who used to be like Wild West style. Like when I first started out in poker, I mean, for people who are completely unfamiliar with me, when I started out in poker, I put $50 online. I played sit and goes, and I ran $50 up to. I was playing $9 sit and goes on a $50 bankroll, so I had like just over, quick math, just over 4 binds, right? 4 times 9. Yeah, so just over 4 binds. And I managed to. I didn't know what I was doing. Like I won some home game $5 sit and goes with like my friends, and then just decided like whatever. I'll put $50 online, play some $9 sit and goes. Like sweet. Don't really know what I'm doing, and I run my $50 up to something like 500, and then I decide, okay, like I've ran up to 500. What else? Like what else can I do in poker, right? So then I see like cash games. I've never really played. I play a little bit with friends, but like don't really know how cash games work. I just start playing cash games, and I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just playing like suited hands, like from every position, just like kind of no structure, obviously, right? Just like, but things go well. I make a lot of flushes, my bluffs work, whatever. So I run that 500 up to like almost $1,000, I think. So I've now taken $50. I've converted with no training, no real strategy. I've gone from $50 to $1,000 ish. But then, you know, playing 9-4 suited from MP starts to catch up with me, and I ended up going completely busto. So 50 up to 1,000, back down to 0. And I was kind of just like confused, I guess. I like this play. I'm not gonna have that many. I mean, I have like basically the way I think of the spot is like he checks back flop, bets turn. When he bets this size, I definitely don't need to hero call hand like this. I think I should just fold. It's very tempting because I unblock a lot of his bluffs, but I think a lot of his bluffs that play that way might just bet earlier. I like his size though. But anyway, so then I found some website. It was called like Poker Strategy. Did some quiz. It was pretty basic training. And they deposited $50 for me for free. But before I started playing with that $50, I found, at that time it was called Card Runners. You know, that was like the upswing of my day. And I just started just absorbing as much content as I could, just watching videos. And eventually I watched enough content where I got to a point where I felt pretty confident in my game. And then I took that $50 and I never redeposited. I ran that up throughout university, playing like up to, I think, I played 100L and 50L for a bit too long. But, you know, I basically ran that up from 50L from $50 up to like 40 grand throughout my like playing part-time in university. So it's pretty like cool. I was like I was a young kid, didn't really have like any plan in place. It was just like put some work in, end up finding like this thing I could do on the side that I made some money doing. So that's a long way of saying that like little bit of structure just made structure, and looking at what winning players are doing and trying to emulate that helped my game out so much. So I would definitely encourage people to invest. If you want to get better at poker, don't try and just do it all on your own. Defend here and just check full flop. Ryan, could you please delete the 6 on your chat box? It's physically hurting me. What if I just add a few more? No, I'm just drawing. There you go. Here I'm double barreling. I think we want to go for like, even though like SPR is kind of weird, I think on this turn we just want to be like pretty polar. We could also block turn, but I think once I've already half bought a flop, I mainly just want to be like pretty polar in this spot. And, okay, I don't know how much jamming you should be doing here, but cool. So like he thinks I'm super polar in that spot too, I guess, and decides to shove 10-7. Because like he unblocks all my bluffs. The thing is, when I take that size, I don't think 10-7 accomplishes that much as a jam, because my range should be like pretty polar. And when I say polar, I'm using a really big size. I should have hands like king queen plus. Like king queen is going to be towards the bottom of my value threshold, so I'm again not betting it that often. Then king queen, aces, king 10, pocket tens, whatever I decide to bet in that spot, and then really strong draws that can bet get it in. So like against my best draws, it's not amazing, but so the only thing he's really accomplishing is when I bet that spot with like queen jack. I have an open ender in that spot, and then obviously decent amount of equity versus 10, so he denies equity to that. But outside of queen jack, like a lot of my other bluffs should be lower equity, so just like gut shots and maybe even just bare ace highs. So I kind of get what he's doing, but I don't think his hand accomplishes that much in position. Thing is, though, he may think that that's like definitely not the case. Like he unblocks all of my, so I check close to range on flop because I'm out of position. So I'm going to be check calling, and he potted the flop. So I check call a lot of flush draws, all my king X that are basically like all my one pair hands. I'm going to just mainly check call flop. So if anything, I have like a strong but capped range because I'm going to do some check raising, but it's going to be pretty polar. I'm going to check raise some combo draws based on his big size. If I think he's bluffing appropriately, I should have some low equity check raises. But if I think his pot range is too much, just like queen 10 plus, then I'm just going to check raise some, like my bluffs will just be like high equity hands, like queen 10 myself. So then after I do that, once I just check call, I have a strong but kind of capped range. Then he bombs that turn, and we get to that river, and like, again, that river, I never have 10-9. So he has all the nuts that I don't. I've also kind of capped myself to get to the river, so my entire range is bluff catchers. Like, I have aces there, but like, it's not like I love life with aces on that river. And I'm going to have ace-high flush draws. I'm going to have pair plus flush draws, like based on the texture that I'm always going to check call my like 7x that turn a pair and flush draw, or whatever the turn was. I have all my ace-high flush draws. I have all my, like, depending on the exact turn, I'll have just like some jack X that are supposed to bluff catch. The ones that unblock his. I think this turn's pretty interesting when he pots flop. Don't think he should be doing much betting on this turn. Like, probably should just check range. And this is actually a spot I can get away with a small bet. Because his range should be polar on flop. And just because I'm against a polar range doesn't mean I have to be polar. He's going to have a lot of just like check folds here. If he's playing flop appropriately. Again, if he's only potting high equity and 9x plus, then this bet is not that effective. So then if that's the case, then my bet's not great. And but see, like, it worked here, so he clearly does have some of those low equity hands. So I'm allowed some small bets there. It's just such a good turn for me that it's okay to have some small bets. what pre-flop ranges do I use? I will just look at like a mix of Monker and then modifications that I've made. I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, the bluff hitter. So yeah, anyways, like if your assumption is like my range is too strong, then you're not really thinking about the spot correctly. Like in his shoes, I would be like sick river jam. Like I have 10-9, my opponent never does. I have all this, whatever strong hands I was repping earlier, and then like he doesn't have to jam that river that aggressively. But if he doesn't jam that hand, then he literally has no jams on the river because everything else is either like a missed flush draw, which are gonna be his worst combos. Say is like ace five hearts. He's definitely not gonna want to bluff that hand. I'm gonna have like, I think this sucks. Like I don't think I win that often here, but I don't think I want to bluff this hand. I think I just have too many hands to bluff from that I just have to take my showdown here. Good non-bluff. And I guess he thought I would bluff that spot a lot. I mean, his hand makes perfect sense to check river. So yeah, I think that's just like kind of a cop-out to not bluff that river. That's not to say like I didn't bluff in that other spot with Jack 8. It's not to say that I don't cop out myself. Just in that spot, people cop out. I think his hand should just, if he's not bluffing that hand again, then I should just literally hero fold everything that isn't the nuts on that run out, or that doesn't beat a significant portion of his value betting range. So now I just get to fold aces on that run out, and then like his value bets suffer. And if he's not bluffing, then he doesn't gain back EV that way. Now, if he's watching the stream and hears all that, he can overbluff that spot. So again, it doesn't really matter that much that he didn't bluff in that spot. It's not like I can just going forward say, well, he never bluffs this spot, so now I'm just, I'm always gonna ace 8. It's pretty close here. Don't love it. This one actually might be a fold though. Again, definitely an allowed strategy. He's basically, when he does this, I'm assuming he's pot and check. And this kind of illustrates why this hand. So actually this hand just folds. And I would rather defend like 10-9 with the 9 of diamonds. But my hand is just a pure bluff catcher in a spot where we actually make the flush a decent amount. We have queen jack, and then we have tons of pair plus equity hands. And whenever I have ace x with a diamond, which is going to be most of my ace x I get to the turn, I would defend those. I lose to like 10s, chop a lot, I can get hero called. I'm just gonna block, check, block. The river isn't actually a complete brick. Like pocket sixes could easily play this way, but he still has like ace highs. Is it worth joining PWR-CFP if I'm in the USA and can only play 15 hours a week? Depends on the stake you're playing. If you're playing like 100L plus and you want to get to like high stakes, which all of our coaches have done, then yeah, definitely worth it. What's the cheapest sit and goes? You probably play like 25 cent. I don't know. I've never aside from that story I just shared where I played like the $9 sit and goes like 10 years ago. Like that all happened like say like 10 years ago, and then I didn't play poker. So I graduated university and I stopped playing poker for like 3 or 4 years. When I say stopped, it means like I played like, I don't know, 50,000 hands a year for the like those 3 years. Like every now and then I would just randomly play some poker. Ryan, were you analyzing? Yeah, I did some commentary on the Heads Up Challenge. And that was how I first started working with Upswing, and then after that, they decided to bring me on as a content creator as well, so I make Play and Explains for them as well. 10-7 re-raise on that board. Is it loose if the 7 is blocking? Yeah, like he blocked. Like if I have 7-8, that's, you know, exactly. Like if I have any low equity bluffs, it's gonna be something like 7-8. It's not even low equity, but like 7-8. You know, obviously a hand like Queen Jack, I at least have an over to a 10 as well. Where 7-8, I'm drawing to like a non-nut straight to the 9, and then like a decently nut straight to the 5. How do you know for sure someone never bluffs? I mean, well, you're playing poker, you should never really talk in absolutes, but you can infer that they might be under bluffing spots if you see them arrive in a spot where they're bottom of range and they don't bluff. So that example was prime, where like that opponent got to the river with queen high in a spot where maybe he has some worse hands than queen high, but it's very difficult. And on top of that, he just has like probably the best combo to bluff the river with, and he didn't. So here against Jarrett Man, he check raises flop, check turn, and we river 2-pair in a weird way. Most of his, it's kind of interesting. So he should play like 9x of hearts this way. So if I had the 9 of hearts, it would be pretty good. I don't really have offsuit 9x here though, so I can't really have the 9 of hearts. And then I'm going to fold to this, because once he does this, we just want to block flushes. This hand is, if anything, he's going to bluff in this capacity with like a hand like an 8 or a 9 himself. So the modules don't cost any extra. You just buy an Upswing membership and then you have access to the modules. So if you buy an Upswing membership, you can watch the module I did on how to think like a high stakes professional. For anyone who's hopped in recently, I just look at hands played by well-known high stakes players where they're playing against another high stakes reg, and just talk about what I think of both their plays, and if I think, you know, if are they doing what Pio's doing and I'm missing it. Are they doing something Pio's not doing? And just like, yeah, like look through those spots. Here we're cold four-betting. The spot's interesting because if this player shoves, ace king off is supposed to be a fold, but it's not supposed to be a fold versus this player, and that's why. Sometimes everything you say just like works out perfectly. And right now that's kind of what's happening. Ryan, sorry to bring it up again. We have ace king on. I said I would never. Oh, we have one pair. You have ace. Oh, ace 7. Sorry, man. When I read that the first time, I saw ace king deuce. So it's a pure rainbow turn. You bet and get jammed on. It's not really a spot your opponent should have jams. So probably in like an actual setting, if we don't know anything on the opponent and we're 100 big blinds to start the hand, it's probably still the weakest hand. You just like bet call and hate life. Unless you have some sort of like insane read that this guy just always has the nuts in this spot. But again, like if it's a live game, players are too live to just randomly jam in like ace queen here, because they just don't know what else to do, to randomly have a bluff sometimes. So like if I have 100 big blinds, I probably just bet call it off. If you're deep, I would fold. But yeah, it's a really dumb spot. And the problem with these things is like people always say, well, they never have a bluff. But when you look at equity in this spot, if you think of how much money you've put in the pot, how much equity you need to win the pot, then all you have to do is like, he has to have a few hands. Whenever he has a worse hand, we have him like dead basically, right? So if he ever shoves ace queen or ace jack, he's like basically dead. But when he shoves it, especially if he has like a weaker 2 pair, so if he shoves like ace 7 or ace deuce, then we have additional equity. We can hit our king, and then we can also counterfeit him on a 9 or potentially a 7 if he has ace deuce. So when you combine all that, then he can sometimes shove a worse hand. He can sometimes be doing something crazy with a hand like 10-8. Probably not super likely, but it's also not impossible. So you can sometimes be doing something like 10-8. Here I'm value betting in a limp. we checked down to the river, limp pot, and I value bet a pair of twos, and I got called by ace high. Sorry, so yeah, if you combine the fact that he can sometimes have a worse hand, you have okay equity against the hands that you're beat by, and then he can sometimes have a bluff, I would think we just call ace king. And unless we have some crazy read that we know he always has value in this spot, and like his value is always better than ours. How long am I streaming for? I don't know. Haven't really decided. Just kind of streaming. Hadn't really like committed to a time frame yet. Also, need to update this whole like stream setup. Doesn't look the best right now, but it's been a while since I streamed, so. I also got a new monitor, just kind of throwing off my like display, as in like the ratio is different. The plain explains from me and Gary have been incredibly helpful for you. That's awesome. Glad to hear that, man. It's cool to like be, like I said, when I was probably in a similar position to you, this was the resource I used to get better at poker was this type of content, right? Like just watching well-known players play and see what they did and try and learn from what did they do that I don't. So it's cool to now be on like the other side of that, where I'm kind of helping people in the same stage of their career who want to move up the stakes. So good luck with that. I'm an American player who wants to switch from low stakes MTTs to 25 NL Zoom. Any tips for someone transitioning? Buy pre-flop ranges. They're really important because when people switch from playing, especially if you are aware of your pre-flop ranges for tournaments, then you'll end up playing too loose in cash, because especially at the lower stakes where rake is high, you don't want to play that loose. So you have to be aware of like how tight do I defend this spot? How aggressively do I 3-bet here? What does my cold 4-bet range look like? Do I cold call every, like there's all these things that in tournaments there's no rake, like as in like obviously they rake your buy-ins, but for the less experienced person there's no rake post flop, right? They don't rake the actual pot, so therefore you're supposed to play looser, because the combination of antes and no rake means you should just play looser. This guy's in the tank. Yeah, I was gonna say like probably a spot where he wants to do a lot of really small 4-betting, due to the fact that he's not folding like almost ever to this player because he's putting too much money, but he will fold against me because we were close to 200 big blinds deep. So I could just jam here and put him in a really miserable spot, but obviously not with this hand. But like even a hand like ace king becomes more enticing to jam here because he will have potentially some 4-bet folds against me. Like even a hand like this is not loving life for that situation. Why do I run? Yeah, I would strongly encourage you never to cash out. Cashing out is a way. So running it twice. Yeah. So what Upswing just said. So running it twice, all it does is just like offset your variance. You are gonna run your equity twice. So if it's a flip, you're each gonna win the pot like half the time. So like most of the time, you're both gonna win one of the runs, right? Obviously, you're gonna sometimes lose both runs, but you're also going to sometimes win both runs. So that's all that affects. Cashing out means you take whatever equity you have. So if you have a 50-50, you just get back 50% always. But Stars is going to take their cut as well. So you're going to end up losing money in the long run. So you will make the same money long run by running it twice in EV, as I believe Mike just said. Whereas when you cash out, you're basically giving Stars more money. And Stars has enough money, so don't use the cash out feature. Cashing out helps no one except for Stars. Aurora, yeah, it looks okay right now. We just played I don't expect to win this pot that often, but kind of talking about, he min-bet flop, min-bet flop, min-bet turn. So we just called twice with our gutter, and then pair plus gutter, and we lose. Them's the breaks. What is the PWR CFP that was talked about, and how do I get more info? So I talked about this briefly. You can find the application on my Twitter. So it's Coaching for Profit. It's myself and 3 other mid to high stakes coaches. We basically, you apply to the program. We accept people that we see potential in, and our goal is to take you from your current stake to playing mid to high stakes yourself. All 4 coaches went from playing 100L to 500L plus in a year's time. So our goal is, you sign a 1-year contract, and our goal is to take you from the stake you're playing at to mid to high stakes. So if that's of interest to you, definitely head over to my Twitter and you'll find the application there. And then, as I've also mentioned, we will be coming out with a website in the coming weeks or months. I'm not sure the exact timeline, but there will be a website, and that will help explain a bit more. Do I have an exclusive challenge on Stars? Yeah, I have like the 2K one. You're running over the Sal Costa fellow. The funny thing is, he actually runs a competing CFP. So, which CFP are you going to pick? Does he never bluff the spot, or maybe a super GTO? No, like, I would assume if you run that exact spot, so like people think about talking about GTO. There's spots in GTO where you still end up bluffing. If you get to the river with a certain combo, your bluff frequency is 100%. So in very narrow range spots, when you only get to the river with a few completely unpaired hands that unblock folds, you're all in. So like, I don't even have to run a sim to see that, like, if he pots twice in that spot and he assumes I get to the river with, even if he thinks my range is a bit tighter than it should be in that spot, like maybe I slightly underfold, there's no way Queen 10 isn't better as a shove than a check. Because I don't have, like, I never have the nuts. I don't have that many slow plays. Most of my range is one pair that has to, like, decide if it wants to hero call. So, like, he could give up hands for sure. He obviously can't just bluff everything. But Queen 10 of diamonds, I don't need to see a solver river result to know that is 100% a river jam. Doesn't need to RNG it. Doesn't need to look at it, anything. He just gets the river with Queen 10. He's all in. Where should I buy ranges? Yeah, I think like Upswing is a great place to buy ranges. Hey Ryan, I have a few questions. Do you play any less than 100 big blind poker? Like, I play tournaments a bit, but for the most part, no, I do not. So, not my. If you have any questions with relation to that, it's not my specialty. Three bet, we see this flop, gonna check, and we get jammed on, and we have kings versus ace queen, and he is deciding if he wants insurance. He doesn't take it, and we win. Good for us. And over here, not our favorite spot, we see a 3-bet, we see a check, he blocks turn, we call, and now we show down and probably lose to ace queen based on like what we see. I don't think I want to bluff this hand though. Maybe he sometimes has like pocket 10s himself, but ace queen 10 basically plays his hand the exact way he wants to play it, so worth noting. Maybe a shot of your dog. I also have, for those who aren't familiar with it, I also had a 5-month-old son right now too. So maybe at some point we'll get him to pop up on stream, but also, you know, being a new parent, check out my Instagram, you'll just see like pictures of him all the time. And I may be biased, but he's pretty damn cute. Unconfirmed on the bias though. How much harder do you reckon Zoom on Stars is relative to other sites? I was able to beat 25-0. The one thing I would say is, like, I get people want to play on Stars because, like, the software's very crisp. Like, the one thing Stars does, software is crisp. But, like, why do you really care where you play cash games? If you're winning money on a soft site, there's no shame in that. Like, there's nothing. It depends. Again, if you just play poker as a hobby and you get more satisfaction out of, like, knowing that you're winning in tough lineups, or just, like, enjoy the challenge more than making money, okay, cool, then play on Stars and understand that, yeah, the games are probably going to be a bit tougher. But if your goal is to make money, then just play on the softest site you can where you make the most money, right? Like, who cares where you play? There's no award for. It's not like when you win more money on a soft site, you, like, if there's an asterisk beside it, like, oh yeah, I won 10K casually playing poker this year, but it was on a soft site. Who cares? Like, is it better to grind your ass off and win 2K on Stars where you're grinding out a smaller win rate? No. So just play wherever you think your EV is highest. How frequently do you think yourselves and other high-stake players make large mistakes? All the time. All the time. It's so hard to, like, not make mistakes. So, very often. Which is why there's money in poker. Because if the best players are making mistakes, you can damn well believe that so are the low-stakes players. So are the less experienced players. How do I forgive myself? I, like, never fret over a bad play. To give you some context, yesterday, in my head, I flopped trips, turned a boat, rivered quads. So the board was 10-9-9, blind versus blind. It's a really weird spot. Here I just call twice, obviously. The weird spot's on the right. If I phase a bet, it's not that weird. I just fold. And I just show down, I think, with this hand in this spot. I don't have that many worse hands, though. So it is, like, obviously interesting. But versus the jam, I don't really block anything. Like, I block pocket fives, but he doesn't really play pocket fives this way. I'm not going to have that many great bluff catchers, but, like, just having a diamond is better than not. I think it is actually somewhat close with this hand. Because maybe he 3-bet 6-4 suited out of frequency, and he would just do this with 6-4. He also 3-bets, like, pocket fives out of frequency, and I block that. But I think I still get to fold versus that with that hand. So this hand. So in my head, I have 9-8. Flop comes 10-9-9. I am blind versus blind. I decide to check one of my weaker nines. I don't have that many nines. I could also just bet very high frequency here, but I check. My opponent checks back. Turn an 8, so I turn, in my head, I have a boat. I have 9-8 on 10-9-9-8. Bet turn, my opponent calls. And then the river is a 9. So I'm pretty good. In my head, I have quads. I also block his turned 8x, but I unblock all of his, like, straight draws that are going to be, like, jack high, 7 high, maybe even queen high. I believe there's a backdoor flush draw as well. So, like, I don't think I get hero called very much when I have this exact combo. I should definitely bet some quads on this river, but in my mind, this quads should check. So I check, and my opponent bets 3x pot. And in my head, I say, we have quads, we've checked the river, and our opponent bets 3x pot. We're just like, nice, like, this is sick. But, like, in my head, I even have this thought. I think, like, why would someone need to bet this big with a bluff for this spot? Like, it's so crazy. Like, 3x pot. Like, why would you want to, like, you're not gonna have quads that often in this line, so it doesn't even seem necessary to really have a line for quads. I'd probably just bet, like, a size that reps, like, a strong 10, and then, like, your overbet could still be big, but it doesn't need to be 3x pot. Because once you go 3x pot, you're literally repping quads in a spot where it's hard to have quads. Anyways, but I'm like, whatever, I have quads. So I sail it in. My opponent tanks and eventually calls. and I see a 9 in his hand. So he slow rolled me on the river. He had 10-9. So I don't really care about that. But I was just like, what the hell? Like, how does he have quads? And I look at my hand, and the whole time I had 10-8. So I did not have a 9 in my hand. So I literally punted, and this is at 1K. So I literally punted in $1,000 in a spot where I probably should have lost. Like, I probably will end up hero calling the river at a decent frequency anyways. So I would have lost a decent amount. But I wouldn't have lost a stack. And I did. So, like, but I just laughed about it. I showed it to the other coaches. Like, sometimes you just kind of, like, you're playing enough tables. Sometimes you don't know exactly what you have on a table. I think I'm still just going to bet this flop. Okay. Again, spot where, like, I don't think he should have that many raises. He can definitely have some, but we're just going to call. And if he has a flush, he's a flush. Doesn't really matter too much if he has a flush because he wasn't raise folding a flush draw on the flop. And against this, it's kind of funny. This is the spot we had earlier, but in this spot when I top set, I don't think I want to jam. It's really weird. Like he should be pretty polar here. Again, probably worst river is like an 8 or a queen. Well, we get the worst river because like 10-9, I could see playing this way. But I'm not folding. Spoiler. It's not impossible for him to have worse for value. It's not impossible for him to have bluffs. But he just has, like, whatever. It's fine. Do you make videos for your CFP or just do coaching? Yeah, well, I make videos for Upswing, so if you want to watch Plain Explains in my module, subscribe to Upswing. But then I sometimes make like content like this. I sometimes make content for YouTube, and then obviously I can do like group in the CFP. I run like group coaching sessions. I also make some like internal Plain Explains for just the CFP, that type of thing. Like, I don't, Jack. The only thing I think we can do differently with Jack's in that spot, I don't think we need to shove flop. I don't think he should be doing a ton of raising in that spot with a flush draw. And it doesn't really matter that much, unless his intention is to like raise aggressively on flop. Like maybe with his exact hand, his is his plan, right? Obviously, is like raise flop, check back turn, fold river when he doesn't improve. So, like, against his exact hand, I would want to shove, but, like, his hand probably shouldn't, like, ever raise, in theory. I don't even know how great it is in practice, because I would, like, he just, like, takes away my ability to bluff. He has so much equity in position. He has a hand that calls down very effectively on a variety of runouts. I actually think against this player, I don't think he has ace-5. He doesn't really have sets in this spot. I think we can actually get away with some like big bets here. But, like he should definitely, if he's gonna raise that flop, then he should have 7s and 3s. Hopefully he has some bluffs. Who knows? We've seen some nitty checkbacks in some spots today. But yeah, I think like the only thing I can do is I can just 3-bet flop, but having top set. I would rather just 3-bet flop when I have like aces, kings, queens. Here I'm just bet calling turn. This guy limp called button. He's a lot of like pair plus straight draws here. And just shove river. Because again, I think he just like... Our hand would want to check at a frequency, but he's not really going to bluff spades. I don't think he has, like... We block hand like queen jack, which he's going to bluff, so he's going to have more just like 8x and stuff. Yeah, like that hand. I think his hand, like once he gets to that spot, is probably pretty well played. Like he limp called pre and flopped. Has 2 pair on the river. At least he has me tagged as a fish, yeah. Five four suited greater than 5-6 suited blocking ace 4. Yeah, I would rather have ace. Definitely, I'd rather. If I had 5-4 there, I'd probably be like, I'd probably end up calling and hoping my opponent. It's like those spots are dumb though because it's not that hard to overbluff that spot because you can have like all combos of ace king with a diamond that play that way. But does he have anything worse than that? Does he shove thin for value? How polar is he? There's a lot of things that you'll never know in that spot. So there's so many modules you can watch literally. So if you haven't played since 2010, probably buy that like $7 post flop plan or whatever. The one that I said helped both of or 2 of the coaches I work with. And then go from there. Like there's lots of content on Upswing to watch after that. What do you think of multi-tabling and you forget the pre-flop action? Often when I'm on like 4 tables, I forget. I don't usually forget pre-flop, but I will forget like some post-flop stuff. Maybe PFE meant post-flop. So sometimes I'll be a little like, how did I get here exactly? But you can usually look at the pot size and kind of determine. And typically if a pot doesn't have your attention, it was usually checked at some point, and if it has your attention, you should like know the action, right? Where can I send an application for CFP besides Twitter? Why you don't have Twitter? If you don't have Twitter, again, we'll be posting it. It won't be there right now. One second, I'll grab it, and I won't post it here, but I'll post it on my Instagram. So you can find it on my Instagram as well. You can go to just like, you don't even have to have an Instagram account. You can just go to Poker with Risk on Instagram, like on your web browser, and it should be there. Tiny URL. Oh, do I already have one? Oh, we do. Okay. I don't have to. So yeah, if you go to my Instagram, you can find it there as well. One of those hands is like super attractive to do something with. With this roll frequency, I will check raise. You have to be careful though. You have a lot of hands of this class. debating. I probably have you as I'm not as creative with my tags as you. So I basically have everyone tagged as yellow. I don't even know what this red tag is, to be honest. So you're probably tagged yellow. So unfortunately, I'm not as kind. Like supposedly you gave me like good rag tag. If it's any consolation, if I had a good rag tag, you would be in there. And people say poker players aren't nice. Like, the only label that really matters, like I said, is yellow. Yellow's a reg. Everything else is whatever. I don't really. You're probably seeing other people raise and then I fold, so I don't really cold call. I don't really cold call much as a whole, and then like typically using like small pairs as your cold calls are as amazing as it is to flop a set. When you don't flop a set, your hand is complete trash. So I would encourage you not to over defend small pairs. Unless you're playing in the games I'm playing in which case, please over defend small pairs because it makes me more money. You will win a stack against me when you flop a set at a decent frequency, but that's okay. It's kind of a tournament spot here on the right. Sorry, I'm loading something, so my computer's kind of lagging a bit. This hand's close. Like, hand hates getting check raised, so, but it loves this spot. Or we just get to bet turn jam river. It's kind of interesting because like I beat some hands, but I also block his king and queen x, and he doesn't have much 5x here, so. I'm sorry, I block some king x. And like I do show down actually in that spot okay against if that player is actually a recreational player because I beat all of his busted draws, but he'll have some ace highs that I get to, like ace deuce, ace 3, and then ace high flush draws. So it's not like, again, similar to that queen 10 hand we talked about before. It's not like bluffing is going to win that pot every time, but I think it's better than checking. Eight of diamonds is like helpful, and I mean like Jerry Man's probably gonna lead this at a decent frequency on this spot. Obviously, my hand just folds. You can know your opponent's gonna be bluffing you a decent amount when you have this shit of a hand, and it's still fine to fold. Like he's gonna have like some 4-5, some 7-4, but he might not lead as much in this spot because his ace x don't really benefit from leading, so he can just check. And then what I do expect to see is on river, I expect to see like a decent amount of blocks and then some really big overbets. So like on this river, he might have 3 sizes actually. So he might block a bunch of ace x, big bet his like ace 10 plus that isn't a flush, and then overbet his like flushes and 2 pair, or sorry, flushes and yeah. So like this, I do expect to see this a decent amount. Because now this run kind of makes sense to have this size. And obviously we fold this hand. How do I analyze post-flop a hand that you played? Yeah, I use Pile. Talk through it with other people as well. This player makes a very tiny 3-bet in position. I mean, it's fine actually. He's also short, and we get not the best flop. And versus this, I think we just fold because we have okay equity against like ace king, ace queen, but pretty shit equity. So if I have queen 10, I would call. If I have a jack, I would call. But ace 10 kind of block his bluffs. This hand should get in here is 3-bet sometimes. We did not get the 3-bet this time. Call a block. Yep. And then, so Jack X obviously want to bet turn, but we want some King X to bet turn as well. Just be careful though. We don't have like, yeah, I mean, versus this, I'll just fold. Because we'll continue, obviously, like, it's pretty easy to continue versus the size, but King 8 does not make the cut. Over here, we flop a pair and a flush draw. Opponent see that's half pot, we call. Turn 10. I don't expect to win. I expect the way this hand played out seems reasonable for our opponent to have a bunch of Queen X and some 10X, but that doesn't mean I want to bet this hand. I'm just going to check, showdown. And we just face the bet check bet. Pretty decent bluff catcher if he's playing the spot appropriately. But it is difficult to actually have bluffs in that progression, so could just overfold for sure. But the reason we have a good hand is like he's not really gonna bluff with the 6. Most of his 9x bluff turn, so again, we get to the river. When we get to the river in this line, he should have, with our exact blockers, he should have more bluffs on average. Call flop. Don't think I want to do much raising with this hand. I think even versus this size, I'm going to call. Should be a pretty high frequency check from our opponent. And then when we bet, it should be a pretty big size. Like, weakest hand we're going to bet is like 2 pair. So I think like this size seems reasonable. And now we beat like 10s with a club, 8x with a club. Pretty interesting. Like, it's a big bet flop and check call a big bet on that turn. I guess he just thinks I'm over bluffing that spot, but it seems like potentially poor range construction like on the flop. Like, obviously, he can't just check fold all his pairs on the turn. So it just depends. Like, he's going to check fold, like, 9s, 10s, jacks, queens without a club. But then a hand like jack 8, like, he'd rather check call turn with an 8 that it has a card under the jack, because I'm going to have more floats then. Because my floats will be the 2 overcards with a 2 overcards to the 8. think, though, we will call it a session here. We'll finish up. We will check our session results. Again, if you guys weren't here earlier, definitely, if you're not subscribed to Upswing, check out their content. I have a module that I had a lot of fun doing where I go over high stakes players' hand histories, compare what they did to what Pi would do, what I think I would do in game, see what spots am I missing, what spots is maybe the average player missing. And then even sometimes I actually just say, like, I don't like the play from either player, and just like stuff like that. So it's like pretty it's a lot of fun to do, just see, like, you know, what are the high stakes players doing that maybe I'm missing, and how can I learn from that. And then also, again, if you're in that range where you're saying playing 15L plus especially, and you're trying to move up, you know, you're tired of playing mid stakes, micro stakes, you want to take a shot at the next stakes, check out my Twitter or my Instagram. I have an application there where you can apply to the CFP. Only takes a few minutes, and you'll receive a response regardless of whether you are going to get in or not. If you might get an interview, you might just get a response, but either way, we'll get back to you and have something, some course of action for you. Anyway, so we'll take a look at the session results. We lost a few pots there towards the end, but overall still a decent session. Let's just change this window. I don't know how weird this is going to look, but I'll try it. Yeah, so make this a bit smaller. So won about 4 buy-ins, ran a bit above EV, but you know, EV's not everything, because say, like, hypothetically we threw at the flop with jacks in that one spot, you know, then we actually lost out on EV because we would have got him with jacks against a pair and flush draw and we lost. Who cares, right? EV doesn't tell the whole story, but we won 825 hands, won 4 buy-ins, so it's a pretty good session. So we might be streaming again on Upswing in the future. Also check out my, all my socials, all my channels are above here: YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. Poker with Risk, for any of those, you'll find me, and we'll potentially be making more Playing Explains on YouTube. Obviously, we'll be making more content for Upswing, so get in the lab, get that content, and then Instagram and Twitter if you like other daily graphs or baby pictures, because I post my son on there